Hey, 42 here. In the southwest of China's Sichuan province sits a small village called Atulia, where the local school children must climb an 800-meter bamboo ladder up the side of a sheer cliff face just to get to school. The only school for many miles around sits atop this rocky outcrop. There are no roads or pathways to the top, only this ladder. I bet your journey to school seems incredibly benign in comparison. Now, you may not have to scale a cliff face to attend school, but the education you receive every day, or did once receive, is just as precarious and insufficient. Education is broken. Over the past 50 years, the world has changed beyond recognition, yet the school systems in most countries have stayed static. Our current education systems were designed and built in the industrial age. In some countries, that's as long ago as the 18th century. Sure, there have been many subtle changes over the decades, but the basic goal of our school systems has remained exactly the same for over 200 years. And what is that goal? To produce obedient factory workers. During the industrial era, and right up to the epoch of the 21st century, most people worked in manufacturing, whether it was on production lines, on farms, or in mines, where things like creativity and individuality only get in the way of profits. Factory owners needed obedient drones in large numbers, and so many wealthy business owners invested large sums of money into lobbying to influence politicians to shape the school systems in the ideologies of said factory owners, putting values such as order and discipline as top priority, and making sure that creativity and individualism were quashed. Such lobbying happened mostly in America, but nevertheless, the school systems in most developed countries today are still built on the same robotic and stale ideologies. And so, kids today arrive at school nice and early, not a minute too late. We are ordered to sit down in our pre-designated seats, because God only knows what utter chaos would unravel if we were to sit where we pleased. We are programmed to respond to a series of bells and whistles that signify when we are allowed to eat and leave. We have to ask permission to speak, to move, to go to the bathroom. This used to be kind of okay, because this forced obedience would carry over to the factory floor, which is where most people ended up anyway, right after school. But today, and for quite some time now, we have been living in a world where most people can do whatever they desire for a career, if they try hard enough. I mean, you can actually be a professional bed warmer, a pet food taster, or a raven master. Yes, these are all real jobs. The nature of jobs has changed drastically, and today we live in a world where qualities such as creativity, individualism, and entrepreneurialism are highly sought after by a lot of employers. Let me ask you a question. How come, if you're bad at English, maths, or science, you're repeatedly told you're not trying hard enough? Your work is scrutinised, your parents are notified of your poor performance, you're made to resit tests until you get it right. Yet, if you're bad at art, music, or sport, you're simply told, don't worry, it's just not your thing. Despite these all being just as valid career choices. The huge fact of life that modern school systems ignore is that everyone has their own unique talents and things that they are really passionate about. We're all naturally good at something, and terrible at other things, whether that's because of our genetics or our upbringing. Some children are just more creative, whilst others are more academic. We're all unique. Albert Einstein supposedly wrote, "Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid." The human brain's ability and desire to learn is astonishing, and yet it is possible for almost anyone to learn anything. I'm not saying that every child shouldn't learn mathematics, because every child can. But where most school systems fail is in bringing out the best in every child and encouraging exploration of their natural abilities. But the really stupid thing is that schools don't even do a decent job of teaching English, maths and science. In fact, they do a rather terrible job indeed. Public education today is based on a system of taking a bunch of information and systematically reciting that information to the students, whom are later tested on their ability to remember that information. And the key point here is that exams only test a child's ability to remember. So, weeks before your exam, you would recite the same textbook information over and over again until you had near enough the entire textbook memorised. But what happens after the exam? You forget it all. Multiple studies have shown that children and adults forget 95% of everything that they memorise after just 3 days. So an A-star test score says no more about a child than their ability to recite information. It is not a strongly correlated representation of actual intelligence, that is the ability to acquire new skills of one's very own accord. This process of faux learning via memorization is known as inauthentic learning, because you aren't actually learning, only regurgitating information, and anyone can do that. It's what I do for a living. So, you ask, how does one learn authentically? How do we actually teach kids instead of asking them to memorize? Well, we quite simply have to spark their curiosity. Humans are unquenchably curious. As toddlers, we have to touch everything we see, stick our fingers into plug sockets and dismantle everything. That curiosity never leaves us. It's hopefully why you watch my videos. When you allow children to become curious about something, they will actually teach themselves because they have a primal desire to find out as much as they can. And the best part about this self-curiosity driven learning is it is completely authentic, and children will absorb that knowledge like a sponge. And most importantly, you can be sure they will remember it, because when we are engaged, we are happy, and our brains naturally remember the times when we are happy. A great number of the world's greatest thinkers, its greatest entrepreneurs, and history's greatest leaders all share something in common. They dropped out of school. Names such as Richard Branson, Quentin Tarantino, Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, F. Scott Fitzgerald, John Lennon, Walt Disney, Tom Hanks, Coco Chanel, Benjamin Franklin, Albert Einstein, Charles Dickens, and Princess Diana. Every single one of these successful and highly influential individuals dropped out of school between the ages of 11 and 16. Now, I'm not promoting dropping out of school, but simply illustrating a quality that all of these people have in common. They were incredibly passionate and curious about one particular thing that interested them. Do you really think that they would have dropped out of education if their school supported their true passion? No, these people all felt the same way, as many young people do today, that school was only holding them back, slowing them down. Luckily, these people were able to follow their passions regardless of their education, but sadly, millions of children aren't. Many young people could unlock their true passions if the education industry focused on what they do best instead of everything that they're not good at. But thankfully today you can fulfill your own curiosity. Thanks to technology, we are now able to learn anything we desire with unlimited, invaluable information at our fingertips. Self-education and discovery sites such as Skillshare enable you to fulfill your thirst for becoming a better you, where traditional education has failed you. Skillshare is an online learning platform with more than 17,000 classes in design, photo, and much more. I personally dropped out of college. I instead used the incredible resources available on the internet to teach myself the skills I needed to do what I love. And in doing so, I have been able to fulfill my passion of making videos and teaching others about incredible things. YouTube is my career. And I'm so very grateful that today we don't have to rely on outdated traditional education systems to follow our passions. Using Skillshare, you can follow your passions and turn doing whatever it is you love doing into a career. A premium Skillshare membership gives you unlimited access to thousands of classes from leading experts all around the world, so you can learn from the very best and unlock your true potential in the comfort of your own home. If you have a passion that you would love to turn into a career, then incredible Skillshare courses such as Art of the Start, turning ideas into high growth businesses are a great place to start. Since Skillshare is sponsoring this video, the first 500 people to use the promo link in the description below will get their first 2 months completely free to try it out, risk free. After 2 months, it's only $10 a month to watch unlimited classes. But with 2 months free, you have nothing to lose, and you could look back in a year's time when your hobby has become your career and be so thankful that you did. Now, there is another fundamental problem with school today, and it's not to do with what goes on in the classroom. I'm talking about sleep. When you start a job, it's generally accepted that you will turn up at 9 AM or earlier every morning, and this same time expectation is put upon school kids all the way from primary school to high school, college and university. But there's a deep-rooted biological issue with that, which explains why when I was at school, I spent at least 30% of my lessons asleep at my desk. Our bodies are phenomenal timekeepers, and our subconscious is often well aware of the current time, even if your conscious mind isn't. You know how sometimes you wake up exactly 1 minute before your alarm clock? This is because of your body's circadian rhythm. This is our internal clock, and it also determines when it is the best time for us to fall asleep and to wake up. But our circadian rhythm varies throughout our lives. When we're younger than 10, our bodies want to wake up as early as possible, but it soon gets later and later throughout adolescence. Between the ages of 14 and 24, our circadian rhythm is set at the latest it will ever be throughout our lives. And our natural desire is to wake up later in the morning, for example, after 10 AM. There's nothing we can do to fight this biological urge. Recent studies have shown that forcing teenage students to wake up before 7 AM to attend school between 8 AM and 9 AM plays havoc with our body's intended sleep cycle. The result is that teenagers get far less sleep throughout these critical years, and concentration in the classroom takes a steep dive into the sleepy abyss. There is absolutely no scientific evidence that starting school any earlier than 10 or 11 AM is beneficial to learning. Quite the opposite, in fact. Thankfully, this at least is changing. Over the past couple of years in Britain, as part of a large experiment funded by a London charity, hundreds of schools across the UK are being asked to shift their school days forward an hour or two and asking students to arrive at 10 AM instead. This experiment is still ongoing today, but early indications from this large-scale test have already shown that school children across the country are happier, more engaged, learning more, and the rising rates of mental illness amongst teenagers, which has been partially attributed to sleep deprivation, are starting to plateau. There is one country that has taken changing the entire school system into their very own hands and made changes so sweeping that the way they do school is completely unrecognisable to most of us. And as a result, this country now has the most successful school system in the entire world. Welcome to Finland. Over the years, multiple studies have ranked Finland as the most successful and most efficient school system in the world, and they rank number 2 globally for science and number 3 for reading. But what does Finland do so differently to, say, the US, which consistently ranks down in the mid-30s for efficiency? America also ranks number 33 in science and number 17 in reading. Well, for a start, children in Finland don't even start school until the age of 7, compared to the normal age of 5 in most countries, allowing them far more time to just be children. And for the first 6 years of a child's education in Finland, they are not measured in any way. It literally doesn't matter how they perform in class, because seriously, what is the point of testing a 10-year-old when all they really want to do is paint on walls and lick trees? In fact, there is only just one standardized test during the entirety of a child's education in Finland, and it's not taken until they're at least 16 years old. And that exam isn't even a test per se, it's used to find out which students need more individual help than the others. Homework is far less common, and they don't begin to actually issue homework until students are well into their teen years. In fact, Finnish kids spend the least time on homework per week than any country in the world, at an average of just over 2 hours per week, compared to 6 hours per week for the average American pupil. The Finnish school day is far shorter than other countries. They typically start at 9 AM and finish school between 1 and 2 PM. Teachers in Finland only work for a maximum of 4 hours each day, and they put aside 2 hours each week for professional development, helping them to become better teachers. One of the biggest differences between Finnish and American schools is the amount of free time that students are permitted. In Finland, students get a 15-minute break after every single lesson. The average daily break time of a Finnish school student is a whopping 75 minutes, compared to just 27 minutes for an American student. Recent studies have conclusively shown that more break time relative to class time actually increases test scores and learning, and decreases mental illness, depression, and general bad behaviour among school children. Quite simply, a happy and healthy child is going to be less bored and more engaged. So how do Finland do when it comes to encouraging every child's unique abilities like I was talking about earlier? Remarkably well, actually. Finnish school pupils have 25 lessons a week, and 9 of those are arts, crafts, music and sports. That's almost 40% of lessons. Also, the national curriculum in Finland is just a set of broad guidelines rather than a strict checklist that has to be adhered to. The individual teachers have a lot more power to tailor their lessons to suit their students. Children aren't segregated into different classes depending on their intelligence or historic test scores. Classes are kept small, but children that need extra help are given huge amounts of one-on-one attention to help get them up to speed. And the results show that the gap between the worst performing kids and the highest performers in Finland is the smallest in the world. In Finland, no child is left behind. But it's actually true over there, rather than just an empty political slogan. In Finland, the high school dropout rate of students is a tiny 0.4%. In America, it is 25%. That's millions of students per year. By far one of the highest in the developed world. America also has one of the largest gaps between the test scores of the rich than the poor. But a lot of experts argue that you couldn't simply take the blueprint for the Finnish school system and implement it overnight in America. For one major reason. The two countries are culturally, economically, and socially so very, very different. For a start, the cultural differences are enormous. Take religion. In the US, 22% of the population are religiously unaffiliated, with just 3% categorizing themselves as atheists, whereas in Finland, an impressive 60% of the country are religiously unaffiliated, or non-believers, and 22% are atheists. Almost everyone in Finland is middle class. They have one of the smallest gaps in the world between the rich and the poor. This allows for a stable and consistent publicly funded school system across the entire country. Whereas America has the biggest wealth inequality of any developed country in the world. This creates huge problems with balancing the school system from state to state and district to district. In America, the gap between the quality of education in poor areas and wealthy areas is enormous. To integrate the Finnish system into American schools, the whole economics of the school system would have to be turned on its head, as well as schools in states constantly competing against each other to get the best test scores and get the most funding. American teachers get paid merit pay, a top-up of their salary if their students perform well in standardized tests, causing teachers to push their students beyond reasonable levels to achieve higher test scores, with no regard to whether they are genuinely and authentically learning. Merit pay does not exist in Finland, neither does competition between schools. Children in Finland, and most countries for that matter, can go to school without the fear of violence. The statistics show that in the US, 27% of students have carried a dangerous weapon to school, 10% have carried a gun to school, and 40% have been in a physical fight whilst at school. Now, I'm not here to endlessly praise Finland or to point fingers at America or any other school system for that matter. But proper education is so unbelievably important to society, as it is, quite literally, our future. The children of today will be the scientists, doctors, lawyers and politicians of tomorrow. Economists predict that improving the education system in the US would boost the US economy by $27 trillion over the next few decades. Similarly, in the UK, economists predict that there is much room for improvement in our school system too, and doing so would boost our economy by £3.6 trillion. Improving education would mean a better, safer and more sustainable world for everyone. Yes, we need to take inspiration from Finland and other education-leading countries. But first, we need to take inspiration from their attitude towards society and towards life. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please click here to support me on Patreon. Click here to watch another video, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, don't forget to check out the link in the description for 2 months of Skillshare for free.